Yeah, it's a show about nothing. We're not keeping that in the cut, just so you know. I call it 20-somethings. Yeah. I said it's 20-something, all day, listening all day. Do you hear me? No way. And I call it 20-somethings in the hallway. I'm just trying to ball, pass it all to me all day. Cause it's 20-somethings, a show about nothing. I don't even know what I'm saying, gotta be something. It's 20-somethings, yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to 20SomethingsTV. I'm Danielle Farrell.
I'm Jack Hieronymo.
I'm Chris Anderson.
I'm Alex Hieronymo.
And our guest host today was a former host on 20SomethingsTV, Amanda Gretton.
All right guys, thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
No problem. Today's first topic is about something really important to the whole country right now called the Syria missile strike. The United States fired 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Syria overnight in response to what was a chemical weapons attack that killed more than 100 people. At least 6 people were killed, Syria claimed, but Pentagon said civilians were not targeted at the strike and was aimed at a military airfield. All but one missile hit their intended target, one U.S. military officer told NBC News.
Who wants to start?
You can start.
You can start, Chris. I know
Me?
you have a lot to say about it.
I like to rebuttal on people's things, but I can start the topic, that's fine. So I have clearly a strong opinion on the Syrian missile strike, and that is I think that I totally back Trump 100% on this issue. I think that Assad, a leader of a country in the Middle East that is subject to massive turmoil and just horrific actions that are done by Assad on his people, I think this is a great way to say that, listen, you can't do this anymore. America is a huge superpower in the world, and we need to start showing that instead of just saying it to everybody. And I think that if Assad tries it again, then there's going to be similar repercussions, and I think this is going to teach him a lesson.
I think it's not so necessarily trying to prove the point that we as America is still a superpower, but more on the fact that, there still are sets of rules for the world that everyone has to follow, and that you can't just do things like that
but
and
no
get away
one's
with
enforcing them. So now there's somebody enforcing them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But even though,
that's important.
while enforcing these, he's going against, according to Syrian military, said the U.S. attack violated a lot of international laws and customs. And he didn't get Congress approval beforehand, like he was telling Obama a couple of years beforehand to do so.
However, though, when you have an action that was taken by Assad, and then he gets it from his general saying, listen, this just happened, you don't wait 3 weeks or a month to do that. You know what I mean? Congress is known to not do things on any sort of schedule, okay? So when he's the commander-in-chief and he has the chance to maybe stop, how did he know that Assad wouldn't do it again or again or again? So that's why, he took the action. He could have dropped a lot worse military, payloads on them, and he chose a very intelligent weapon to hit very direct and chosen targets that were military, not civilian. So I think he did a great job in that aspect.
Well, what makes us any better than them at that point? That if we're going to bomb people, military, no matter what they are, we're talking about people, human lives that we're bombing, killing people. 6 people died. I mean, what makes us any better by doing that?
So would you rather have Assad kill 100 people with gas weapons that didn't do anything wrong, or 6 people that joined the military for a leader that bombs his own citizens?
I mean, that is the ethics question in all of this. That makes it really difficult.
But also, our country, we're doing so many horrible things to our own people on a daily basis, and we don't really spend money on that. And we have spent, a missile costs $832,000 to make that, costing over $50 million to go send all these missiles over to Syria to bomb people. And we're not spending this money on certain things that should be happening in our country. We're not helping out with the Flint crisis. We're not helping people with educational problems or helping homes or helping our own country, although Trump stated that his goal was to make America great again. But he's not helping our own country by spending the money on
Doing nothing for America
So-
at that point, focusing on other countries.
Well, hold on. So
I
can definitely comment on that. So like you said, it's like $800 and something thousand per missile being shot over there, and it is unarguable to say that the military budget in the United States is definitely blown out of proportions.
Yeah.
It's huge, and it doesn't need to be right now. But people are focusing on the wrong part of the budget. They're worried about how we shot missiles in an effort to do something that was important, where we shoot missiles, we test fire missiles, bullets, any kind of military equipment. We do that every day, and we're shooting at nothing. There is so many situations where we're wasting money, and I would tend to say that this was not one of them. This, I think, goes above and beyond, and it was important. And for someone to disagree and say that the actions were not appropriate and that the actions were not deemed like essential is really, really hard to back up, because what Assad did was a war crime. I mean, like using mustard gas or whatever gas it was against his own people, that is an atrocity. Like, it's a war crime. You cannot do that.
On civilians.
On civilians. And if no one was to act on that, that would have been huge. That would have shown an incredible sign of weakness from everyone. My biggest problem with this entire situation is that the United States was the only country who shot the missiles. There are so many other countries.
Yeah, hundreds of countries.
Hundreds of countries that could have done something. And the fact that nobody else did, I think that says a lot.
Jack, what do you have to say?
That's just my take.
Oh, well, I was just going to go off the fact that the whole military spending, it's like, if you can imagine how much money we actually spend on training and testing and...
But what you were
Right,
just saying
I
was
know.
how much money is spent to protect lives in America. Are you going to put a price on a life? Because if you
Exactly.
are, Assad could have killed many more people with the chemical weapons that he has access to and has shown to use on his own civilians. So I think that 59 Tomahawk missiles is a very small price to pay to maybe save an entire population of Syrian
Yeah,
people.
because there was a purpose to this. We did
Yes.
this for a purpose.
Yeah.
It was an extreme situation.
And I
I'm
think
not-
it's going to work.
I'm not saying this was a completely bad idea. I'm annoyed at how he went about it. I'm not saying this was like we should not have gone and went over to help those people ever. I am saying though that the fact that like I understand the whole we're spending so much money on the military, like wasting on other aspects. I'm going to complain about that for years. But this fact that like the first thing we think of doing to spend all this money is to go a different country, and when do we say that we're going to help a country first before our own country? And I understand this is a very selfish way of thinking.
Well, I think
and
there's
I
a lot of things that
there's a lot of
he does for this country as well.
there are a lot of things, but like in my eyes, I really feel like a lot of the money should have, before it even got spent to go do that, should have been spent on our own country before this even happened, and it wasn't.
Right, I definitely agree with you, but I think the fact that, like I said, we were the only one who shot missiles,
Yeah.
kind of proves the point that it's like when something happens, they just kind of everybody depends on America to kind of step in and do something, and that is exactly what happened here. Everybody sat by and watched while America did everything.
But like on another hand, like how is this gonna for like hurt our relations? Definitely because like Syrian military said the U.S. attack violated all international laws, as I said, and they said this makes America a partner of ISIS and other terrorist organizations.
I mean, when you go and you commit a war atrocity like gassing your own people, you really don't have much of a voice to tell people about what's right and wrong.
Right, that's the
where
most
you lose
hypocritical
credibility.
thing I could
But
have
some of the
actually
people
seen.
who have these opinions are not necessarily the ones who are having, war crimes. I mean, so I haven't really been able to say much about this because I don't live in the U.S. right now, so I'm not quite as involved in American politics at the moment. But I will say that other countries do have really strong opinions of the U.S., and most of them are not positive.
But do you know who doesn't have opinions? The 100 people that got gassed in Syria because Assad killed them.
So
we're
it's very
saving
true.
people.
And I mean, words.
That's how you have to think.
I like to think that actions speak louder than words, and everybody likes to talk about big game. That the fact that we're the only country that took action, that says more than anybody else could say. I think we've gone over all that.
Yeah,
I think we're good on that.
That's a great
Let's go
point.
to the next one.
All right, so Pepsi recently posted an ad,
Oh my
which
God.
they say they were trying to protect a global message of unity, peace, and understanding. That being said, it received intense criticism from people who said that the ad and imagery from Black Lives Matter movements were trivializing widespread protests against Black and minority people being killed by the police.
So Pepsi went out and they talked about how it was supposed to represent like Vietnam era protests,
Which is such BS.
which is debatably BS because of the fact that it was like Kylie and Kendall Jenner, and it was obviously not a Vietnam protest.
Yeah.
It's just kind of hard to pin down what they were going for, because it obviously, what they were trying to appeal to, or what they say they were trying to appeal to, if you actually watch the commercial, it just was not.
They're
It was
also
not
happy.
what they were going for.
Yeah, it was the happiest protest I've ever seen in my life. Everybody was smiling. Everybody was drinking Pepsi. Which
I'd like to know
always
where they
happens at the
saw that and
protests I
tried
go
to
to.
mimic it, because that just doesn't happen.
It was a
They
very romanticized view of protests. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
involved in a lot of protests in the last few months, and although there are people who are celebrating sometimes, whether it's a women's march and you're celebrating community, but there's still anger there, and that's the reason why people protest.
People protest because they're passionate. People don't march down the street because, I like this. This is good. I think this is going well. It's just not what happens. It's like they make a mockery of so many real issues in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
With the police, the protesters, the racial tensions, just everything. Everything in the commercial is done wrong.
And you know what? It's a bad business plan to take a political stance as a business anyway, because you're gonna lose the customers that are opposing that view.
Which happens to be
you
everybody.
You want to try to stay neutral. So what they did here was the opposite effect, I think, of what they're trying to get at.
It's just how does something like that get greenlit is my question.
I mean, I think it's a little bit problematic that we're trying to talk about how this involves Black Lives Matter versus the Pepsi commercial when there are 5 white people sitting here talking about it. I mean, I think that's a bigger issue too.
That is quite an issue.
Wait, why?
Well, we don't have
We
exactly
can't
the
talk
history
about
of the story
that. There
of
is
it.
nothing that we can say because it's not an issue that affects us personally on a daily basis.
That is true. That does not affect me personally.
I don't think I can speak to the comparison. And who knows who in Pepsi decided to make that comparison either. I mean, that could be a problem. Like, that could contribute to the problem of why it was a misrepresentation. Because it wasn't somebody who is involved in this movement making that decision.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it was Kylie or Kendall Jenner's fault. I mean, they were just getting paid money to be in it, but like the face of the commercial is just white privilege. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what those girls are. They're famous and rich and white, and they didn't do anything.
And you know, it really didn't make me like them anymore. If anything, I felt the commercial was extremely bland. It didn't make me want to drink Pepsi or go dance in the street or like Kendall Jenner anymore. I was just like, okay.
Okay, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Coke's better. That's what I said.
All right.
So, the next topic: how young is too young for a smartphone?
See, this subject is hard to talk about because of how fast and how often things are changing. Because back 5-6 years ago, when we were how young was too young to have a smartphone, like that's when they were really just surfacing as like, you can have this. It's like, I remember back when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, there was maybe 3 or 4 kids with a smartphone. But now it's like most of them. My little sister is in like 7th grade. She just got an iPhone.
When did you first get a smartphone?
I first got a smartphone, I think, late into my sophomore year of high school.
Senior year.
I got one in middle school.
I got one in middle
Oh,
school.
you were one of those?
I didn't
Well, no,
get a smartphone until I was a sophomore in college.
That's a late bloomer on that one.
But my first cell phone was, I was 11 or 12, I was in the 6th grade. End of 6th grade. So I could call my parents so they could come pick me up because I was starting to do activities after school.
I got my first phone when I was 9, but that's because I had to travel all the way from New Jersey to Alabama for a camp, and that was like a pretty fair reason.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, that's why they're giving phones to children.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. It was just like that it was out of pure necessity at the time, but now it's just like you don't have a cell phone unless it's a smartphone. And then kids just happen to get smartphones because that's what cell phones are. It works with the family plan to just add a smartphone instead of buying a different line.
I'm almost more bothered by the fact that like young children who aren't even in consideration for phones are playing with their parents' phones constantly.
Yep.
When you
That
see a
happens in my
2-year-old
house.
playing with a cell phone, I never played with my parents' cell phone.
But they weren't around.
I know, but even when they did start to come on the scene, that was not a toy. You did not touch your parents' cell phone because you could break it. They were expensive. But now I see babies in strollers playing games on their phone or just looking at pictures of themselves.
It's just lazy on the parents' part. If you're gonna give your kid a phone or an iPad, that's just lazy. That's terrible parenting.
I wouldn't give my kids.
There's a lot better
that
things
ever.
that, they could be doing.
There's a lot of better things, like always. And like, for example, if you have an iPhone, get Instagram. Or just following us at 20SomethingsTV, because it's the end of our episode. Check us out next week. Bye-bye.
20-something, all day, listening all day. Do you hear me? No way. And I call it 20-somethings in the hallway. I'm just trying to ball, pass it all to me all day. Cause it's 20-somethings, a show about nothing.